Good morning. It's Ted Misztela with eXp Realty. Thank you so much for getting in touch with us and requesting your free home valuation. One of the things that's really important is to understand what's happened in the real estate market over the last couple of years. I mean, I love looking at the stats and I can talk about them forever. And I think that, statistics around, what real estate has done in Nova Scotia, what it's doing in the Halifax, Dartmouth area in particular, any area where your property may be is really important when creating the best possible valuation. And it all starts off with having a great understanding of the data. So let's get into it right away. And I'm going to just move my face here a little bit so that I'm not blocking off the view. So I've got the graph here, and there are two lines. There's a green line and a red line. Sorry, a blue line. Something that's really cool is when you own an asset, and you see that the graph is moving up a lot on the right-hand side, that's generally a really good thing. Okay? Now, this graph goes back 12, 13 years, okay? And what you can see, okay, is that this stayed in a range between 2012. The interesting thing was that in 2012 and the lead up to 2012, there's a lot of excitement about shipbuilding, and we did have a little bit of a ramp up. We would have been down here a little bit before that if the graph went back another year. This is when I really got interested in real estate, and investing in real estate is when in this period. All right, and then it stayed sort of flat. You can see there's not too much movement in either the green Nova Scotia line or the blue Halifax Dartmouth line. All right, and it's still staying flat. Now, interest rates were medium. They're probably about where they are now. All right, but the thing is the immigration programs that they were putting a lot of effort and work and advertising in. I mean, they had billboards up in Ontario about moving to Nova Scotia, and then of course, with the government stance on bringing more people in from other countries, what we started to see was a change in the supply first. And that's how you're going to see it. You're going to see a change first in the supply of homes, all right? And then once you see that change in the supply, okay, so let's move over to this graph. This shows how many homes are for sale. All right, so in 2014, we were at an all-time high for Nova Scotia in the Halifax Dartmouth area. But then it got lower every spring summer season. All right, and just around 2017, all right, in around here we got to a bit more of a balanced part. At this point, it was just smooth sailing, no changes in the prices based on it. The interest rate balance with the supply that was available kept things trading in a range. All right, but as this supply started going down, okay, we'll go back to the close price and look how that corresponds. Okay, 16, and then it starts to get out of its range here in 17. Okay, and you can see that, if this was where it was, it starts to creep up. This blue line where it was dipping significantly below, it's now not. All right, now the supply continued to drop and drop and drop and drop. But the real gasoline that got poured on that fire, okay, and you can see it right here, this is when COVID pretty much happened. This 2020, February, March, this is when the world shut down. All right, and this is when, the governments needed to do everything they could to stimulate economy growth, money. They started giving out the supports. They dropped interest rates. At this time period, there were some people that were getting 5-year fixed mortgages for 1.1, 1.2%. All right, your ability to borrow a lot of money goes up significantly the lower the interest rates are lowered. And then also too, as the interest rates go up, you can't borrow as much. So it really changes how much competition there are for what homes. Now that combination of super low inventory, our lowest point of inventory was this December of 2021, okay, into January 2022. And that's what resulted in these massive price spike. Look at this ramp up. So this is, from 275 up to 475. Your double almost happened here. Okay, a general rule of thumb that you can say is that the price of homes has doubled in the last 10 years. But if you look at this graph, it's a slow climb right here, but then this is the huge jump. All right. Now, massive inflation from all the government supports. They had to do something to tighten up that inflation because the cost of things getting crazy. I mean, it still is crazy. Interest rates go up quickly. Not just the buying power that's lost, but just like the fear of what's going to happen, reports of homes losing so much value. Seasonally, you're going to see like a 10% drop or 8% drop at times of the year. But if you couple that with the fact that interest rates went up, like, in 5-year fixed terms, we're now over 5%. So, I wouldn't necessarily say you had 25% of your buying power, but I mean, probably a third. So we saw a creep back in price. All right. Homes have sort of started to creep up in inventory. So what we're forecasting here is a bit of a stabilization. What that means for your pricing strategy is that if there are more homes available, you have to make sure that you're priced accurately. And a big part of getting this market evaluation for your property will be to determine the range of where we anticipate it selling for, and then determining for you what personalized strategy is the best. Because once we have that range established based on comparable properties, what has sold, what's available for sale that's gone under contract, then what we need to do is we have to decide what approach you personally want to take. Okay, and I want to tell you a little bit about the 3 different approaches that we'll take. Okay, when we're selling a property. I'm going to try to pull up one of my property reports that I just sent out. Okay, and we'll clear the name, clear the address. Okay, so the address is gone. Okay, here we go. So for this property, we determined, based on a site visit, based on everything else that had sold near it, and based on what was under offer nearby, what the 3 different prices we could offer this at and what that might create in the market. The true value of a home, what some people say is the market value, that can't get determined until it's actually sold for that price. All right. Or, it goes under contract and that contract's firm. So I don't like to use the term fair market value or market value because that's not determined until it's sold. Ultimately, the buyer's going to determine that. I like to say, what is a perceived market value? Okay. And we get to that perceived market value by, counting up the square feet, evaluating the general level of finish, the condition, how well maintained the home is. All right. Well, all those things that we put together to get to this perceived market value. Once we have that, all right, we've got a couple options. Some people feel really strongly that their house is worth more than the perceived market value we get to, or they really want to, sort of gamble and take a shot at putting a higher price on it. There's opportunities where we completely agree with this, all right, and there are other opportunities where we're against it. The opportunities that we see for aspirational pricing is when the property is so unique that you can almost call a one of a kind. Me and Matt almost call it like an art listing because the value can become abstract. And with that type of property, with its unique element, maybe it's the architect that designed it. Maybe it's the location. Maybe it's something to do with the view, the ocean frontage, the beach. Maybe it was featured in a television show or a magazine. Maybe this home has some sort of celebrity status, then we can attach a premium to that. All right. But if there are many comparable properties, all right, what's going to happen is buyers are really well educated. Like an example of when we work with buyers, if I go into a house and take them to another 3 houses, they can see what their money will get them. And buyers are, there's a little bit more variety to choose from. So I just want to go quickly. I will pull up a recent transaction from our business for each of these examples. And we'll start off with the aspirational pricing. All right, we'll talk about how long it took. All right, now, beautiful home on the market in Gaspereau Valley. Okay, and this is maybe about 10 minutes outside of Wolfville. And we were so impressed by the property that when we came to it, it was, this rustic farmhouse, but inside very modern. All right. And the thing that set this apart, okay, is, if you look at this graph here, we have the house, the garage, but this lot, okay, has 6 to 8 kilometers of developed, maintained walking, hiking trails. All right. The original intention was to sell the house and the owner would keep the trail system. But when we saw that value and when we had discussions and we had some other people, ask about buying the house and what was behind it, all right, it became clear to us that, there was an opportunity to sell this very valuable thing, and it was so unique, one of a kind, and we came up with a price, and, we were on the market at 1.3 million. We ended up negotiating down a little bit, but the person that came and found this property and loved it so much and had to pay for it this amount. We did have other offers on the house with the additional land. One was at 925, one was at 875, but we held on. And you can see 284 days. It took a long time. All right. But eventually that 284 days netted this seller an additional 200,000. Okay. So super unique situation here. And that's where you need to save that aspirational pricing. If there are a lot of homes that we can compare your property to, like if you're in a neighborhood and a lot of the same, if there are a couple small unique things that can justify pushing the price up, we'll definitely use that in our marketing. But to go way above the perceived value, there has to be a super unique situation. All right, so we'll take that there. And I think that the next stop we'll go to is Mill Cove. Okay, because we have a property and we had it on the market for about 40 days. The average for this price point in this area, all right, it was about 70 days. So when we go with a perceived market value, we should get it done in the average days on market for the price point. And I'm just looking to see here if it's going to show up, just because we did have that private. Okay. That paperwork, that home sale is due to close on Wednesday this week, and it'll be reported publicly when that happens. But I just want to give you an idea of this guy's on Google, of the location. So this is Mill Cove Shore Road, okay? And if we spin around here, this is the property. All right. Now we targeted this one with more of a market value approach. All right. Even though it was, across from the beach, the owner didn't want to wait as long. So the average days on market and sale to list for this area was approximately 90 days on market. And this property was listed around 700. It ended up selling for 655, and the average list to sale price out here was 94. So it performed, on average, a little bit above. So if you're going to go and you want to have some, a little bit more certainty, and you don't want to play the long waiting game, okay, that perceived market value, the closer we are to that, there may need to be one adjustment, okay, but that's what's going to get the house sold at a reasonable time. All right, now the quickest way to sell a house, and the main use for this is when there's so many buyers that they're just going to be lined up at your door. All right, so that was a look at the aspirational pricing and then perceived market pricing. Now let's go back to auction or event pricing. The idea here is when you have something that there's very limited supply of and that you know that there's a big buyer pool. So I'd say anything in HRM right now under 500, if it's in good condition, as long as it's not like a huge renovation that'll look like a money pit to someone. All right. There's such a shortage for homes for sale. I mean, right now we'll go to, a listing that we have coming up. This is going to hit the market on Tuesday, but I'll just go and find the post that I put up on it the other day. All right, Ted Misztela, Realtor. Maybe it was on my personal page. Bear with me here. Yeah, here we go. So this property here, if you take a look, this is going to come. Just taking a sec to load here. This property is going to come to the market. It's the right-hand side of this duplex. Okay, this is going to come to the market. And what will happen is we'll price it probably about 10,000, 15,000 below the perceived market value. So if the perceived market value is 405, 410, we'll list it at 395. All right. And, because there's only 6 houses or less in HRM under 400, there should be 20, 30, 50, 100 people that get emailed this info and that are interested in it. But I mean, you can see, lovely home, okay, great location, and there will be multiple offers on this. So in that situation where there's such limited supply, okay, and such a pent-up buyer demand, we would go back and use that we'd use that event / auction style pricing. Essentially, we want people to bid against each other. So right now in the market, based on what interest rates are doing, all right, the location of the home, the uniqueness of the home will all guide which one of those pricing strategies you need to use. All right, is it aspirational? Well, you know what? If nobody comes to see your property in the first 2 weeks, all right, you've priced too high and you've actually fallen into that aspirational pricing. All right. If it's at the market value, you should get good traffic. A lot of people are out looking at homes now. If you're not getting the traffic, but this should get it done. And if it's a special property, if it's a property that's there's going to be a lineup of people to buy it. All right. Either from affordability, location, condition. All right. Then boom, you put an auction. This will get it done the quickest. Thank you for listening to our information today about the real estate market, the stats, what the market's been doing, all right, and the different pricing strategies that we employ to sell your property for the most possible. When you're working with us, you're on our team. Both Matt and I have a competitive sports background, all right, and we really want our team to win. So looking forward to getting in touch with you again after this report, and we'll be reaching out to follow up. Thank you.